I'm Summer.
And I'm Mike.
And we got married with children.
It's been 12 years since we got this gang together.
And we're still running the rapids of living with a blended family.
And sometimes that is just not easy.
If you're looking for support and tools when it comes to divorce, step-parenting, co-parenting, and giving it your best,
you're in the right place.
We're talking about everything.
You ready to get this party started?
Always.
Hey guys, welcome back to another Everything Always episode. Before we get into today's episode, I wanted to talk about our open letter forum. So this is where you can write into us a vent, something personal, private that you would never share to anyone else. And it's something that you want to get off your chest. Here's the thing about it. It's totally anonymous. So if you go to everythingalways.co and you hit on forum, you can submit a letter to someone that you've always wanted to write. You can release any kind of like tension, anger. Maybe it's something really lovely that you want to share. It's totally anonymous. We have no idea who sends it to us. The only way that we know who you are is if we reply to you and you reply back. Only then can we see any information. Otherwise, it's a totally anonymous submission. Some of you have already done this and we love it. Here's the thing. We're getting a lot of them now, and our goal was to read at least one of them for every episode. But now there's more to keep up with. So what we're going to do is we're going to start to collect those, and Mike and I are going to read them together and dedicate entire episodes to these letters. So along with the interviews like I'm doing today with our expert guests, we're also going to insert some episodes where we cover a more of a handful of these letters so that we can get through them, because at this rate, one a week, we just can't cover them all. So keep sending them in. We absolutely love them. We relate to a lot of them and they are awesome. And I hope they're super helpful to you too. Okay, let's talk about today's guest. Today's guest is Dr. Lynette Louise. She's also known as the Brain Broad. She is awesome. So let me tell you a little bit about her, and then we're just going to dive in. And I'm only telling you a little bit because there is like a ton of things that Dr. Lynette Louise does. I call her Dr. Lynette, but I know she goes by different. Some people call her Dr. Louise. Some people just call her Lynette. I'm calling her Dr. Lynette. She is an international award-winning speaker. She's an entertainer. She's an author, a consultant. She is a brain change expert. She's a mental health advocate. And above all, she is a mom. So in a world where lots of people have multi-hyphenated identities, a whole new language would have to be invented to describe Dr. Lynette Louise. She is an artist and an academic, a brainiac. She's a goofball. She's a healer. And she calls herself a heat-seeking missile. I love it. She's a rock and a free spirit. And most of all, she is the loving mother of an intense, colorful, demanding brood of, get this, 8 now young adult children, 5 with special needs, and 8 grandchildren. Crazy, right? I mean, she is busy. In fact, I got to squeeze her in just before she was going to see a client, and I'm so happy that I got to have her on this show. For those of you who have blended a family and you have a special needs child, or perhaps your partner has a special needs child, you know that it can be very stressful coming together. And a lot of times kids just have high needs as it is because they're coming from a divorced family. Their parents have gotten divorced. Maybe now they're having to deal with living with stepchildren. These things are hard. It's already stressful enough as it is. But I really wanted to bring her on the show because she has really dealt with so many types of situations that are families blending together or co-parenting when you have a special needs child. She's just been on the cutting edge of treating autism, even Parkinson's, depression, and other brain-related disorders. And she has an extensive training in several disciplines like autism. She has a 30 plus year personal history of working with her own special needs children. And she's really achieved such an expertise, both in the scientific and in intuitive way of really creating miraculous results with her clients. And she's just a wealth of knowledge, and she's got some really awesome ways of dealing with situations that you may have been told to deal with in another way. So you may have had experts tell you, no, actually, this is how you deal with special needs. And she's actually going to offer up some super highly effective other ways to deal with that. And if you're dealing with struggles with co-parenting with your co-parent now, or maybe your partner's ex, with these types of situations, you're just going to want to hear all that she is bringing today. She is bringing so much value, and I'm just so grateful that I got to grab her for the little amount of time that she has to be on the show. So with that, let's dive in. I am going to save our open letters for upcoming episode where Mike and I are going to review and respond a little bit more in depth to some of these letters. So until then, enjoy this interview. Dr. Lynette, welcome to the show. I am so thrilled to have you today, and just to pull out all of the genius, because this is going to be such a great topic that we're covering today. So welcome and thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. I really appreciate it when someone shares their audience. And I love listening to how people introduce me, because now it's such a big handle to say Dr. Lynette Louise, the brain broad. So they always come up with something.
Yes.
Dr. Lynette's fantastic.
I went straight for Dr. Lynette. Well, I'm really looking forward to today's conversation, because I know that this is something that a lot of our audience and blended families and parents deal with, which is, challenges within a blended family, especially when it comes to special needs children, mental health challenges, autism. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things. It's challenging enough just being a part of a blended family. And then you introduce some of these other issues, and it can be very overwhelming. So before we talk about those things, I'd love if you could share a little bit about yourself and why it is that you do the work that you do. And please share with us too, because you've got a handful of children yourself and grandchildren, and I just share all the goods.
Well, then we'll fill the whole time with me talking, and we won't get to blended families. But I'll give you the synopsis. So I came from a home of abuse, and adoption was a normal thing in my life. My father was adopted. My brother was adopted. So when it turned out that I couldn't have any more babies after having 3 and 1 dying, I decided to adopt. And in that process, I realized there were all these children not getting homes, and my heart went out to some of them. And next thing you know, I'm adopting the ones that nobody wants, and they're all multiply handicapped. And I ended up raising 8 children by, some of them came to me through traditional adoption, some through because they were runaways and I took legal custody of, but I raised 8 children. And in that process, I had to figure out how to help them, because this was way back when this started in the 80s. I'm getting pretty freaking old. Nobody really understood all these things. They thought, with all of the abuse in their background, or, is this child who was locked up in a closet, is it a feral child? Is it actually autistic? Is it actually and so there were so many questions as I would take on the children that I had a lot of learning to do. And at some point realized I better get letters after my name, because I was knowing more than the average Joe, and started educating traditionally. But I entered this world, a high school dropout, trying to make the world a better place kind of person, and was always playing catch up with the science and the learning, and having a hands-on experience with my own children and my own family. In many ways, this was a disadvantage, but in more ways, this was an advantage. I was willing to sort of invent the wheel, go by what was really working for each of the kids. I could hear the faultiness in the original thinking because I was literally watching my children, be different than what they were describing and that sort of thing. And I think as a result, I became a very unique practitioner. People saw my children improving. They had fetal alcohol syndrome, retardation, autism, Tourette's, like they had so many things. And they kept improving, with the exception of one who still lives with me. They're all independent and successful and have kids and things like that. People started asking for my help. And that sort of evolved into me helping other families and then getting credit, letters behind my name so that I could do it officially. And in the interim, I was a stand-up comedian and an actress trying to raise my kids. So I had this enormous wealth of experience, right?
Yeah.
And always trying to blend these groups. So it's a perfect subject, really, because every time I would take more kids in, never mind the other adults. And occasionally I had another adult. He never lasted long, but but I would always have to, consider the children already in the home. And I'd say, well, if we take this child on, this is what we're looking at, and be a family meeting. And they'd always say yes, because their hearts would be big. But then the reality of living through having another child there that had all these needs and they had to move aside for was always very different than what they had imagined in their Disney movie brain. So so that's sort of my backstory. And now I'm a great grandma of 5. I've co-parented some of my grandkids. I mean, I've just been in this world a long time and helped with blending many a family, including my own.
Wow. That is just, it's almost overwhelming to hear all of it, how one person has done so much and taken on so much. And it's just amazing. I think it was one of your daughters that had reached out to me, actually, just bragging and boasting. And I was like, I have to meet this woman. I have to meet her.
Yeah, that's my firstborn. Yeah.
I love it. Let's talk about, you've been through it, and something that you said that really stuck out was, people having this big heart. And I think that happens, when two people come together and they're ready to blend their family, so one of them or both has kids, and there is this open heart because you love this other person. You're ready to take on all of, everything that is them, their kids included, their ex included, all of these things, and add on to your own plate. But then, like you said, reality hits, and it's like, oh wow, maybe I signed up for a little bit too much, and that happens even with just one child. It can
one
happen.
child or neurotypical kids or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So, and now, having these things pop up, I'm so curious, how someone can navigate when they've made the commitment, or how they can determine, is this something that they can commit to?
Yeah, I think we should start there. I think we should start on that sort of, what antenna should you have out that is telling you this is a good idea or not? And I touched on it in a joke, but the truth is that there's a lot of sort of that hero behavior in us. We're encouraged to step up and try to be the hero, especially if we're that kind of person in the first place. And so I think it's important to check on yourself and to check on the person who's stepping forward and saying, yes, I can handle what your package, my steamer trunk full of children. There's a lot to be said here about the idea that I think I'm going to look good doing this. I'm going to step forward and it can be just a single mom with one child who's overwhelmed and really struggling and doesn't know how to do, have a job and care for her child, and feels lonely and feels sad. And along comes, I'm your hero. I'm going to take care of you, right? I'm going to fix all that. And that feels so good. That's sort of like that falling in love moment that feels so good and is nothing but chemicals and hormones and has nada to do with real life. So you want to be careful that you don't jump in because of the limitations and the challenges of your life, so that you can get past those beginning moments into the real life moments. It's so hard to avoid just sort of getting together and living together really quickly because it solves a lot of problems.
Yeah.
You know, I can't get out to work, and you'll pay the bills, and I'll take care of your kids, and you'll take care of my kid, right? And so next thing you know, you're living together way in advance of having really learned who each other is. And so I would really caution against that, and caution against being sold by the idea of how great you'll be, or how great he is, or how great she is to do that. They're not great. They're just great as human beings, maybe, but it's not a feather in your cap to say, wow, I can love people. That's bare bones.
Yeah.
Right. So if I meet someone and I love you and I love everything about you, then I just, by extension, I'm going to love your children. Now, yes, that'll, mean I have a lot to learn and a lot to do, but I'm not a special person because I can do it. And that's a really important point, to make sure that that's not happening before you even go further down this road together, and make sure you're not doing it. Check on yourself. Are you feeling like such a wonderful woman because you can accept his kids half the time because they have joint custody, or because you can be forgiving of the ex-wife who's very materialistic, or whatever hat you're wearing? Check on yourself and make sure that you're not thinking that you're a fantastic person just because you can put up with this stuff, and maybe you'll get some of the things that he has to offer because you're so great. It's a sort of a humbling experience to really look at yourself, but you have to do it.
It's so true, because you can very easily fall into martyr mode. And
Right.
then I would just imagine, that it builds up. Resentment is inevitable if that's the case. If that's the real reason you're doing something, just to look good, or to appear as a hero, there's got to be some resentment that builds up, because it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. And because that'll show up, and you won't necessarily be so callous as it's sounding the way we're saying it. But
Of course.
right. But what happens is you meet somebody, and if you sort of click with them hormonally, then this whole bath of hormones and neurochemicals that are happening in your brain affect your thinking. They make you sort of tunnel focused, and you become blind to all of those red flags that say, maybe I'm not meant for this. You look for the things that say, yes, go this way, because I'm really addicted right now to this moment and this person. And while you're in that beginning phase, that falling in love moment, that chemical connection, that's the moment when the parts of you that should be speaking up don't. And so you want to get past that to a little bit more sort of relaxed time, where you're not so heady in love, and you're more realistic, and you're meeting each other's people in a more realistic place. And you're saying, okay, my love for you is now something else. It's moved into this place of, I can roll up my sleeves and do the work, because I like the idea of living next to you and making decisions with you. And because making decisions with someone is hard when you're co-parenting.
Oh, yeah.
So if you haven't gone the distance on that, you can have a very rude awakening a few months down the road.
Hey guys, did you know that you can text us now? Like, if you want to be the first to know if we're going live, or just launched a new episode, or maybe that we just went out on a date or had a fight, who's right, who's wrong, maybe we ate too much for dinner or missed a workout. No, seriously, we want to share more of what's going on in our lives, and we want to make sure that you don't miss out on anything new. So send a quick hello to 760-389-3722, and let's stay connected. All right, back to the show.
Now, let's say we're in that phase. Now this is commitment that has been made. And I kind of want to, address both sides, whether you are the parent that of a special needs child, or, feeling that feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm giving you such a headache now. You didn't have this before. I think that's what they feel. I know this because I've heard from these type parents. I feel bad. I think he doesn't want to be with me anymore because my child is difficult, or there's so much attention that he or she needs. And then there's also, the side of the person that has taken this on. And I'd love to talk about, like both sides and how to really how to cope and what are best practices. I don't know the right word, but in terms of really, really being able to have a successful relationship.
Well, if you've done that good work at the very beginning, then you've done an awful lot of, you already know you're sexually compatible because you let your chemicals roam. You know that you've got something in your relationship beyond the children that's very strong and will cement you together. So whether it's a love for business, whether it's, an addiction to football, whether it's, I don't care what it is, it's got to be something that is very strong between you, that cements you together as two adults, not parents. So now you've got that. Let's assume, because if you don't, back up a step or two and try to find that, because you've got to be together for a reason that's about you two.
Yeah.
It's also what you can step back into over and over again when you're struggling, right? You need to step back into that thing that you're really connected on. And if you aren't really connected on something, you really shouldn't be doing it. So there's your answer, right? So, okay,
right.
So we know we're sexually compatible. We know we're spiritually compatible, because that's another thing you really want to be clear on. Or you're going to be rubbing each other the wrong way constantly. And then what's your thing that really is cemented between you that's not about your kids? Now you got all three. Now you have something you can fall back to, your sexual commitment to each other. You can fall back to this love of whatever it is that you have in common, and you can fall back to your faith or your non-faith, and you're laughing at other people's faith, or whatever it is that you have in common here. All right, now you have a strong relationship, and that can happen quickly. That can take time. There's not, you can't say date for 7 years. By then the kids grew up anyways. You have to just know that you need some of this as your foundation, so that when you're trying to navigate co-parenting and blending families, you have this place to go back to all the time when it's hard, because it's going to be hard, because life is hard. That's all. Life is hard and life is fun. It's easy and it's hard, and it goes back and forth between the two. And when it's hard, you forget it's easy. So you have to go to the place that's fun. All right. So now we got that. Let's say we got that. All right.
Okay.
Okay. And you got a special needs child, because that's what you said. So I'm going to go with that story.
And I know there's so many, and
we could go at this from every angle in the world.
From every angle, because there's so many different, yes. And, in my mind, I'm thinking, and just for listeners to hear, I'm thinking, there are children that there are mental health issues, there's depression, there's autism, maybe there's a wide range of things that are possibilities. So I know I'm being broad, but
right. So I'm just going to say special needs, somebody who's struggling. Well, even with special needs, there's moments where the challenges are requiring all the attention, and there's moments where they're not. But what I can say is that I think is an important point is that too often parents of children with special needs think they're supposed to put all their focus on the special needs child and shore them up constantly and protect them constantly from the world. And honestly, my kids wouldn't have made it had I been like that. I was more like, well, you got to handle it. I know that's your problem, but you got to handle it. So let's figure out how you handle it. Right.
Yeah.
I wasn't insensitive, but what I was someone who understood that my child's special need was their special need. It wasn't my special need. It wasn't my neighbor's special need. And I got frustrated trust me, by all the other adults in the world too, all the time. But at the end of the day, what you want is to help your child handle their own mental health issues. That is your goal, not to carry their burden for them, though you'll carry it sometimes, but to help them handle it. And when that's how you think, first of all, you're going to be at odds with a lot of mental health professionals, and special education people, but you'll be able to keep putting it back to the child and help them to help themselves. And this enables you to have a life outside of your children and your children to have a life outside of you.
Which is so empowering for them.
Oh, it's so important. So at the end of this story, I can stand back and say, yeah, I was right. Right? But in the middle of it, I didn't know. I just felt like it's incorrect for me to be constantly here. Let me be specific so that people can understand. One of my autistic children, for example, I was looking for a job maybe that he could do, and he was very challenged verbally. And I saw these people moving furniture with special needs people as the crew. And I thought, I wonder if they would be interested in him volunteering for them. So I walked over to talk to them, and the lady that, was running it, started to speak and moved a step or two towards my son. And then he made a noise. And she goes,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I did that." And she backed away. I said, "Wait a minute. You didn't make that noise. He did." I'm like, "Why are you trying to scare this poor lady? She might help you."
Yeah.
Now, this is not how it's usually done, but it should be.
Right.
Because that woman immediately got to go, "Oh, it's not my fault how he acts. I'm not responsible for his behavior." He got to know he's responsible for his behavior. Now, yes, he has trouble vocalizing. So he used a sound because, she'll back off and it works easier. But what if it doesn't work easier? I make it not work easier. So then you have to talk. Then you have to be kind. And okay, so now let's apply that to blending.
Right.
So here you are, I'm a girl, and I'm marrying guys, so I'm going to keep it in that normal gender situation. So I've married a guy, I've got this special needs young man, and the guy comes in and he says, "I can't believe you're letting him rip up all that paper all over the living room." Okay, that's a pretty typical thing that might happen with a lot of special needs people, right? Number one, the guy's responsible for how he just acted. So I'll deal with him first. Right?
Yeah.
And number two, why is there ripped up paper all over the living room? Is it because I've said, "Okay, you can rip up paper. You did all your work. Here's some paper," and I let him, and it's a beautiful experience and it's easy to clean? Or is it because I'm overwhelmed and I've completely given up and I'm like, "I don't care what you do. Go ahead, rip."
All parents have been there, right?
Right. And so how do we move forward? This first thing is I have to deal with the guy who stepped in the door and acted like my son did with that woman. I'm not going to feel guilty. It's not a big deal. It's just paper all over the living room. Let's make it real, make it real. That didn't hurt anything. And even if it was a piece of furniture that was wrecked, it's just a piece of furniture. Let's make it real. And I say, "Okay, I think you could walk in the door and say hello. Say, I see paper all over the living room. What's up?" With an open heart and an open mind, and I'll give you an open answer. You want to go out and try that again, dude? But there is a lot to be said for asking people to be responsible for their behavior. And we unfortunately don't do it. And it makes blending impossible. Because if you don't do it at every single step as you move forward, especially in these beginnings where you're figuring it out, you have this mess to clean up that you don't really know how you got there.
Yeah.
and people they make the mistake of thinking, yeah, but if he loved me, he'd just know. If she loved me, she would just this. No, you got to tell people.
It's so true. It's so true.
Right? So you got to say, please don't walk in the door and pitch a fit about what you see. Ask and I shall answer. And then from there, you can build something, but you got to do that from the get-go. So look at all this sort of foundational stuff I laid out. Now, admittedly, I didn't know this when I walked into some relationships. I wish I had. Right? But I learned it because I didn't do it.
Right, exactly. Those are our best lessons.
Right. And sometimes you can go, okay, well, I heard what Lynette said and all that, but oops, I'm not there. And I'm already in this blended relationship. Okay.
Right.
But you can still walk yourself through those foundational steps, even in the middle. It maybe isn't as smooth as it would have been, but at least you can say, hey, we forgot to make sure we had an area of connection. Yeah. We got lost in the chemicals and now we're, drowning in bills and we're all stuck inside in lockdowns. And right. So go and find it. Something attracted you beyond the chemical, because, lots of people will zing us that way and we don't end up with them. So there's something there. Go find it and make it strong and make it real.
Yeah.
And if you weren't doing that, if you were feeling guilty because you have a special needs kid and apologetic in your head, he didn't sign up for this. Yes, he did. Unless you brought him out on your wedding day out of the wedding cake and said, ta-da, guess what I have? He signed up for it. So stop feeling guilty and start checking on each other's motivations and being clear with each other. That's what communication is. It's not taking responsibility for someone else's behavior, but also not taking offense because they didn't know better than to behave like they've seen on TV.
I think that is just so powerful because I think that is probably the most painful, hard part that parents do, is that they are taking on the responsibility. And I've seen that so clearly. And there is this, if I don't take on the responsibility of their behavior or their special needs, then I'm not doing my job and everything's going to be completely chaotic. And it's almost like they have to feel like they are in control. And so you see, like you said before, if there's a noise, the child made a noise or the child said something, it's just like, I'm so sorry. And they just take it all on as if they had done it. And it's just so powerful to hear the way that you are saying for them to be responsible themselves. And I love that so much, because I think that it empowers the child so much and actually gives them the gift of being able to then deal with things more that they probably maybe were not even realizing they were capable of dealing with, because somebody else was dealing with it for them.
Yeah. Oh, on a day-by-day basis, people are teaching them how disabled they are.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah. If you can teach them how capable they are and that it's their job to handle their challenges and that you're there to be their support and to figure out how to do that with them, then that's a much better place to be at. And there's something when you were talking that came to mind for me. And it's funny, I learned it actually as a director. I was producing a comedy show and directing it. And at the end of it, we had great applause and great reviews. And I'd written the show and I was all full of myself, feeling all great. And I was talking to a comedian friend of mine that I really admired. And he said, "You're not using your people well." And I'm like, what? He says, "You're not trusting your people. You're not giving them the ability to bring everything they have to the stage. You're taking the whole show over."
Wow.
And I was like, wow, he's right. I'm protecting against the failed moments so hard that I'm not helping them flourish and flower. and show me their stuff over and over again and be spontaneous and all these things. And I've taken that with me in everything I've done. That was a very big learning moment for me. And I really took it in with the family too. And it applies here in that description you made. Because if the mom is, in this case, we're saying mom, but it could be dad, but
Yeah.
let's stick with the same story so it doesn't get confusing. If the mom is taking responsibility for everything and protecting for everything and feeling bad about everything, by extension, the man has to feel resentful for it. It's like you teach them, well, you didn't sign up for this and this is really awful and it's really hard and too bad you don't know how to handle it, so I'm handling it. And like it's like by extension, you're teaching them to be miserable while thinking you're protecting.
Right.
And you're teaching the child to feel like the problem. But if you do it the other way, then you get it, everyone flourishes. The child gets to be responsible for whatever they're capable of being responsible for and keep raising the bar. And, you know, your new husband gets to step in and try to learn what all this is and how to do it together. And new things show up you'd have never done, new experiences this child would never have had. And you all get to laugh and enjoy it together and cry together. And it's awesome. And if he has a child that he can bring into a neurotypical child, let's say, that he brings into the story, that child gets to learn what it is to watch someone have to struggle for every single thing they learn how to do. And that child gets to learn what it is to be a caregiver. And that child gets to learn what it is to stand up to bullies or to this is a gift.
I was just going to say, this is actually, you know, as you're saying this, it's like, it's one of those things where if you stay stuck in the I'm just trying to keep things calm and peaceful mode, you don't really get to grow. And everything, when it does go awry, just feels like a pain in the butt, a fire that you have to put out. But when you approach it like you're talking about, whereas, you know, you're going to learn and you're going to grow, and then you get to be an example to this person. And like hearing all of that, I'm just immediately feeling like, oh my gosh, it's growth, growth, growth. So that even when these challenging moments, or there are some of those heated moments or something comes up, it's more like looking at it as an opportunity rather than, oh shoot, how do I put this fire out?
Or at least once you're finished crying, right? We're all human.
But you know what? I mean, that's how it is. That's how life is. I know, you know, I know that difference of, yes, letting yourself cry, let yourself get frustrated. Those are just human emotions. We need to have those emotions. But to know on a fundamental level, to know that it's going to result in something better. It's going to result in some sort of a change, some sort of growth. It's not going to, you know, rather than just keep you where you're at and go, oh my gosh, I'm stuck with this forever. Having the mindset of, no, we can make something really good out of this.
And then I'd add a fundamental piece of wisdom here. Get some space between you and the rest of the world. This is the opposite of game. Yeah, it's the opposite of what everyone will say. They'll say like, you need lots of support. You need lots of people in your house helping you, especially when you have a special needs child, right? Okay, yeah, there's some minimum stuff you need to do, but the problems laid upon each other when you add the neighbors, when you add the caregivers, when you add the therapists, when you add the teachers, when you add the, right? See what I'm saying? Like, and when you add the doctors and there's so many belief systems coming at you that it's very hard to take control of your home.
Yeah.
If you can get space between you and the rest of the world a little bit, whether that is done because you got a country home and it's, you know, and you got a couple of acres, or whether that's done because of the style of how you choose to live with your neighbors, or whatever it is, you will become overwhelmed if you keep asking, am I doing it right? If you keep reaching out for help constantly, it will just weigh you down. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. A little social distancing can be a good thing.
Yeah. I love it. Oh my gosh. There's so many good things. And I know that you have
I mean, I feel like we could have like 3 days worth of content that we could deliver with all of the things that you do and how you help others. And I want to at least, well, first of all, I'd love to have you back on to talk about some of those things. But I also want to share with our listeners where they can find more about you, because I mean, you've got podcasts, you've got an awesome YouTube channel, you've got all kinds of work that you do in relation to the brain. That's why you're the brain broad. But there's so many, so many great things that you do. And I just would love to have our listeners go seek out more. I know that there's your site, LynetteLouise.com, and we will have that in the show notes as well. Is there anywhere else that we can send them or that we can link to?
Sure. Brainbody.net is a more autism, ADHD type of site. LynetteLouise.com is more sort of eclectic, as am I. And then I'm on the autism channel. I have a couple of shows on there. Fix It in 5 is a docuseries that follows me to work around the world. And so you get a lot of parenting advice and brain advice on that. And then I also have Letters to Lynette. So people will write in letters there and I answer them. And that's autism related. If it's not autism related, then you can go just to Facebook. I'm on there in a couple of different ways. Lynette Louise 1 and Lynette Louise 2. I accidentally ended up with 2 of them. And Lynette Louise, the Brain Broad, and Miracles Are Made. And so I think really the best way is to go to because I'm on Twitter and I'm on LinkedIn, but I have links to everything at LynetteLouise.com and also at brainbody.net. Don't put brainbody.com. That's someone else. It's brainbody.net or LynetteLouise.com.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. This was,
you're so welcome. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I'm loving all of this content, and I think our listeners are going to love it too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. And we like to say, if you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you love and be bold enough to share it with someone you don't. See you next time.